Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Mormon Newscast. I'm Radio Free Mormon, joined by Bill Reel and Rebecca Biblioteca. How are you both doing tonight?
Excellent.
Fantastic.
You're looking especially festive, Rebecca, in that red shirt.
I tried to wear some red for Christmas, and then I realized it's also symbolic because a lot of the stories we're going to cover tonight have me seeing red, honestly.
And I put them on red slides for that purpose. We've got a lot of news to cover tonight, but does anybody have any announcements they would like to make before we get to the top story?
I have lots of announcements, but they will be along the way. So I'm excited.
Rebecca?
Nope. I think we'll just plug them in as they make sense as we go along.
Okay. Well, today's date is December 8th, 2025. Thank you for joining us. The top stories tonight are the LDS Church wants the word Mormon back. Next, church releases statement on Wade Christofferson. We all know who Wade is, I hope. Getting Mormon blessings restored. More Mormon molesters. That will unfortunately be my story. Brodies, bigger than ever. And these are the awards. Church excommunicates Karen Hyatt. A lot of people don't even know who that is. I didn't actually until you pointed it out to me, Rebecca. And that's an important story that I think you'll be covering.
I will be, and it is an important story.
And finally, that's how the cookies crumble at BYU. All right. I think Bill Reel has our first story tonight, which is about the church. The LDS Church wants the word Mormon back? Say it ain't so, Bill.
Yeah, thank you. So let me start off by saying this story involves us as content creators, and it is the church going after us. And so I just want to note here, this was in the Salt Lake Tribune this morning. You and I, the three of us were up this morning having a conversation about what's the lead story. And suddenly this came across the wire and we thought, well, I think this is the lead story. So the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the LDS Church, is now leaning on trademark law to challenge several podcasts that have used the word Mormon in their branding, even as the church has publicly urged people to stop calling itself Mormon. Among those targeted is Radio Free Mormon's podcast, Radio Free Mormon, Bill Reel's Mormon Discussions podcast, and Mormon Stories hosted by John Dehlin, a foundational name in critical post-Mormon media. The church says this is about preventing confusion. The trademarking word Mormon helps ensure people don't think these independent voices are officially affiliated or approved by the church. Excuse me. In November, John Dehlin got a message from Intellectual Reserve Incorporated, the LDS Church's legal and trademark office. The notice claimed that the way Mormon Stories use the word Mormon, along with the imagery that the church has trademarked, including the Christus figure, the radiating light motif, and a few copyrighted graphics, might cause people to think his podcast was officially tied to the church. Me, from Mormon Discussions, noted, this was my quote that made the article, "Nobody is mistaking our work for official church channels." The email emphasized that the church wasn't trying to silence Dehlin, saying it respects his right to free speech and isn't aiming to restrict his podcast, website, or social media.
Can I go back to your quote, Bill?
Oh, please.
Because I'm really glad you got a quote there.
Yeah.
I didn't get my quote in because they said, you have to use your real name to have a quote. And I said, well, too bad for you, because I had a good quote, but not as good as yours. Nobody's mistaking our work for official church channels. I was just thinking, when I started listening to Mormon Stories over 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I don't know how long I listened to that podcast before I realized it wasn't an official church production.
You're being funny or facetious, correct?
Well, hopefully both.
Yeah, because soon as you start listening to Mormon Stories, you realize it's this one guy, John Dehlin, and sometimes he's got other folks around him helping him, but early on it was him by himself. He's interviewing people, and everybody's telling you that there's problems in the church, and it operates, looks like, smells like, talks like nothing like the church does. So that seems like such a strange thing. But yeah, nobody's mistaking Mormon Stories, Radio Free Mormon, Mormon Discussions for the Mormon Church.
They pretended they were mistaking Mormon Sunday school for a while, though.
I think some people were.
So they could vent a little righteous spleen all over me.
Have you ever gotten a message? I have, where somebody says, I started watching your podcast and I thought it was a faithful channel because you're so friendly and seem so happy. And then you start saying horrible things.
I don't get any.
Like
I don't get any messages like that. Believe it or
not exactly like that, but saying I thought your channel was this, and then it's that. I've just gotten a few, but it's not on the content. It's based that maybe I look like still, a primary president or something, but then I say horrible things out of my mouth. So
remember for the SCMC who's listening.
I'm not sure where else you'd be saying it out of, Rebecca, but okay.
Exactly.
It's only one of us. Okay, here we go. So I want to note the email emphasized that the church wasn't trying to silence DeLynn. It was saying it respects your right to free speech, DeLynn's right to free speech. By the way, they gave us the same message. It isn't aiming to restrict these podcasts or these websites or these social media accounts. What they wanted, they said, was for him to revise his branding so viewers wouldn't confuse his content with material produced by the institution. Following that request, the podcast moved away from its familiar navy blue branding, which matched the church's color palette, and shifted to an orange theme instead. And you can see that here to the right. Mormon Stories in orange, and also I think intentional to sort of separate it, adding with Dr. John DeLynn on there. DeLynn responded by saying he's open to resolving this amicably, but he isn't about to drop the word Mormon from his title. It refers to Mormon culture writ at large, he said, pointing out that under Russell M. Nelson's leadership, the church has repeatedly asked members and media not to use the word Mormon. Meanwhile, intellectual property lawyer Cara Galliano, working with the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and I looked her up. I've got a picture of her on the next slide. She works she's a lawyer. She works to help small entities and entities that shine a light on unhealthy systems. She helps to ensure that those unhealthy systems can't bully the critics and the whistleblowers into having to get rid of their branding because there's some sort of similarity or overlap. And so she is exactly the right person to be on this case. But she works with the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and she argues that the church's repeated abandonment of the Mormon label actually undermines its claim because trademark law erodes protection when a name becomes generic or the owner stops using it. Cara, an intellectual property lawyer, I already said this with Electronic Frontier Foundation, the same group that successfully defended the Mormon Mental Health Association in a related dispute, by the way, successfully defended, in a related dispute back in 2016, highlighted how trademark abandonment factors into this situation. She noted that under common law principles, a trademark can lose its protection if the public begins treating the term as generic, which is very true in this case. Mormon applies to, in some way, every facet, every sect that comes out of Joseph Smith's founding of a church. You have the Community of Christ today, but they used to be the reorganized Latter-day Saints, reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but people would refer to them as Mormons as well. There are lots of small break-off groups, and they are often referred to as Mormon. The term does have a general meaning. And also, if the organization stops using it and doesn't plan to start again. Now, proving that second condition is usually tough. But in this instance, Cara said that the LDS Church has taken unusually explicit steps to distance itself from the word. As she puts it, you actually have them taking affirmative, clear acts to abandon it, to say we don't intend to use this term anymore. By the way, you can go to Mormon.org and it automatically now goes to a church website. You can go to LDS.org and it will automatically go to a church site that doesn't use the LDS moniker anymore. You've got President Nelson saying that use of the word Mormon is a victory for Satan. And there are, the I Am a Mormon campaign is sort of in the past and been forgotten. And so you have lots of instances of the church putting distance between itself and the term Mormon. And I think this would be an interesting case to see play out in court, because I think there are so many instances of the church showing that it really doesn't want its members to use it, and it doesn't want the public to see it as the Mormon Church.
I was going to ask, do you think that the fact that every member all the time, as soon as you say Mormon, says, that's not us, don't say it, no way, the membership itself, they are trying to distance themselves, extreme distance from this term. I wonder if that would weigh in, because all of us get that. Every time we open our mouth and say Mormon, somebody's going to weigh in on the comments. That's not us. Don't use that. We no longer say that. That's a victory for Satan. So I would think that would hold some sway, that your own user base refuses to use your trademark.
No, possibly. If all these facts are true that you've just related there, Bill, I think it's indisputable that Satan is a lawyer at Curtin McConkie.
Yeah, and he might be better at it than them too, surprisingly, because they're pretty damn good as well. But this came from Kara, and this is her specialty. This is what she's an expert in. And so I have no choice here but to believe her. And I agree with her that the case seems pretty strong that the church has gotten away from this term. And we'll get to this in a minute. But this, Rebecca and I were talking before we went on air. This might be the reason why they're doing it, which is to refreshen the use of it. It will be interesting to see over the next few years if the church goes back to it. And I'll show something else here at the end that'll sort of point to that. But RFM, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think the timing is significant that President Nelson has just passed away. And this is another thing that he was cocking up.
Yeah. And if
Not
you
only
remember,
all the temples, but also not using Mormon anymore.
yeah.
And so he has officially abandoned it. I can't imagine the lawyers circling around him saying, please, what are you doing? It's going to have negative ramifications, and him, pulling the revelation card on him saying, this is what God says. He wants the name of his church. So
Bill and I were talking about that before you logged on, and we were saying there is no mechanism to remove kind of a megalomaniac, right? Who makes these decisions that everybody else can think forward into the future and say, this is not going to be good. But do you guys remember just a couple weeks ago when I podcasted about that Let's Protect Our Logo little article that was on the church newsroom, and it showed the logo, but it also said the word Mormon, this is on the church site, is a key indicator, for our church, and it also represents our vision and values. And we all thought, what a strange, why are they publishing this? This is so unusual.
mhm.
This could be part of it. They are trying to reclaim it, at least in part, perhaps for legal reasons.
I would say that there is a process, policy, procedure. There's a procedure for removing the president, but I think it's more theoretical than anything else, even though it is in the Doctrine and Covenants. It would be a great movie. It would be like the Caine Mutiny.
Yeah. By the way, Rebecca, I don't think you can get in trouble. You're not Mormon. You're Mormon-ish.
I don't know. Did you guys receive your letter through snail mail or for email? I've been kind of nervously checking different things. How did your letter arrive?
Mine came via email.
Okay.
And
I have so many different email addresses for Mormonish and our parent company. I'm going to have to double check, but I think we are Mormon-ish. So I don't know. I'd be curious.
Yeah. All right. So she says here, she pointed to years of direction from church leadership telling members, journalists, academics, and the public. Again, she's told, the church has told the newspapers not to use it. It's told the media outlets on television not to use it that way. It's told its members that it's not a term that they want to see members using. And as you guys pointed out, anytime somebody uses the word Mormon in front of a believer, they relate it often to like using a derogatory term, and it's just silly. But
it's the M word.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but
Pearl clutching.
So anyway, the leadership telling members, journalists, academics, and the public not to use the term Mormon and instead rely on the church's full name, combining the public posture with the institution's rebranding of its websites, social media channels, and other official outlets. Giuliano, and again, I can't pronounce her name right, Gagliano, said that this appears to be a fairly clear abandonment case. Meanwhile, the crackdown hasn't reached every podcast using the M word. For instance, the news-oriented Mormon Land hasn't been pressured so far, and it was the Salt Lake Tribune, who operates Mormon Land, who was notifying us that they've not heard anything. One of the things the church has claimed in its email to me, and I think to Delyn as well, is it has said that it tries to exercise its protection of its term across the entire spectrum outside the church. But what Mormon Land is pointing out is that that's not exactly true. There's some incongruency about who the church is contacting to not let them use the term, or to ask them to get rid of the trademark, or to change their branding. And there are other entities such as Mormon Land that use the term Mormon that have gotten no contact from the Mormon Church. So
would they ever dare go after the Book of Mormon musical or Secret Lives for Mormon Wives? I mean, there's such a Mormon moment in media all over. Would they ever dare try to take on some of these, huge entities that have the word Mormon? I don't think so.
I don't think they'll go after anybody who has enough money to be able to fight them.
Yeah.
Because I think on the front of the word Mormon being a general term, no one's trying to trademark or use the word Mormon alone. They're all adding, like, this is a cultural term, and we're adding some other thing to make it a phrase to inform our audience that this is the culture that we deal with, that we speak on, that we give commentary on.
Can I mention something just in retrospect that brings us to the present moment, which is that it used to be fine. I mean, I'm Radio Free Mormon pre-Nelson, 2016, right? He doesn't become president until 2018. You've got Midnight Mormons. You've got Three Mormons and a Baby, or whatever that other podcast is. You got Mormons everywhere, in the faithful side as well as the other side.
Fair Mormon.
Fair Mormon. Thank you. That's a really good one, Bill. Fair Mormon. That's an apologetic site for and in behalf of the church. And so then President Nelson comes along, gets this revelation about how Mormon is suddenly, like the worst thing you can say about a people. And so now, then people stop using it. Fair Mormon drops the Mormon. Now it's just fair. Midnight Mormons become word radio, et cetera, et cetera. And in fact, when I have Radio Free Mormon, there are pearl clutchers whose comments I've seen sniffing about how it is that they know that I am not a Faithful Mormon podcast, because how could I be? Because I use the word Mormon in my title. I expect you both run into that kind of sentiment. And now, I mean, this is in the space of 10 years, less than 10 years, 7 years. My goodness. And now the church is coming after us and saying you can't use the word Mormon, or you can't trademark it. What the actual F?
Yeah. Okay. Meanwhile, the crackdown, I already noted that, but for the critics rising out of a formerly inside the faith, or formerly inside the faith, the message is clear. The church still sees Mormon as protected property, no matter the push to move beyond the nickname, even if it's a victory for Satan. And so this will be interesting to see how this plays out. I know that John with Mormon Stories has a mediation meeting with the church that will take place sometime in the future. It's probably not super close, maybe a month or two out. It'll be interesting to see what comes of that, what they're asking him to do, which we could sort of take as what they would wish all of us would do. And we'll see what that is. But I think the last thing the church really wants is to go to battle on this. I think they'd like to intimidate people, but I don't think they really want to go to battle, because I think if a bunch of podcasts banded together and said, fine, let's do it, let's go all the way. I had a lawyer reach out to me today who said he would, he also covers these kinds of things, said he would handle it pro bono.
Great.
And I'll also note that Kara seems quite enthused to tackle this as well. And so if a group of folks went in together, it might be interesting to see this go to its conclusion and see what would come of it, because on both fronts, the church is trying to trademark. They do have a trademark for the word Mormon, but to sort of limit everyone else's use of it when it is a general term, and when they've made concrete steps to get rid of its use, that might be problematic for them.
And
Yeah,
it's
what
such a
Sarah's
bad
alluding to,
look for them. It's such a bad look. It's so petty and it's so peevish. I think anybody can see that. And I mean, what do you think, RFM? I feel it's sort of a freedom of speech, freedom of religion issue too. How can I say something and exercise my freedom of speech to talk about, say, the Catholic Church if I'm not allowed to say the word Catholic? I mean, I
well, it's
just
not about
wonder if
saying
that,
the word; it's about using it. And our
right,
in our situation has to do with trademarking
right.
the word, and that's the distinction that's going on with what's happening with Mormon stories and everybody else that's involved, to my knowledge, which is we went through Bill to affirmatively trademark the name, and we did that because there was somebody out there who's still out there
Hmm.
who's doing knockoff podcasts under the name Radio Free Mormon
Yeah.
and under the name of Mormon Discussions and
And
under the name
Mormonish.
Mormonish and under the name Mormon Stories too, I think. But as for us, Bill then says to the people at YouTube or wherever it is, these people are doing knockoffs. We need you to get rid of them. And I mean, they've got like 7 people listening or 9 people or whatever. I'm not sure. It's like AI scripts made by AI voices. It's probably entirely designed and run by robots. But it's obviously done to mimic what it is that we do with our names and to draw traffic away for whatever reason. So Bill goes to him and they said, "Well, we'd like to help you, but do you have those names trademarked? Because you have to have them trademarked for us to help you and get rid of them and ping them off of the internet." So then, because of that, Bill goes to the trademark division. Let me know if I'm getting any of this wrong, Bill. Bill goes to the trademark department and says, "Hey, we'd like a trademark on these names." And they say, "Okay, fine, let's sign you up." And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, and this is a bit of an inexplicable part, the church comes swinging in on a vine and says, "Hey, you can't trademark that."
They
And
get
that's where we are,
notified.
right, Bill? But it doesn't keep us from using the name, which we're continuing to use, of Radio Free Mormon as a title, as a name, and a logo. It doesn't have anything to do with it. It just has to do with the issue of trademarking it.
Yeah, John is the only one that as far as I know, John's the only one that they've reached out to and said, beyond that, you've got graphics, certain presentation visuals that look too close to the church, as if you're trying to imitate us and get some of folks who are looking for us finding you, which is sort of strange because that's the very thing we're up against in terms of the copycat podcast. So they've asked him to change graphics and things like that. They've never said that to us. In fact, they've approached us before and said, "Hey, you use the word Mormon. Would you please put a footer on all of your websites that use the word Mormon to note that that this isn't the LDS Church, and sort of a disclaimer at the bottom." And we have that. But this was for me and for Mormon Discussion, for Radio Free Mormon, it was just a matter of, hey, we saw you guys were trying to trademark these phrases, and we're not going to let you do that. So here's how you can abandon those trademarks, and if you don't, you will. And they don't say it this way, but it's pretty clear you'll face litigation.
And that's what happened to Heather Gay. She was okay calling herself a bad Mormon and referring to herself on the Real Housewives like that. As soon as she tried to, create merch or trademark it, that's when it's triggered and they contact you and say, can't do that. So, but do you think it's ironic that in other forms of media, they try really hard not to let anybody know it's the LDS Church? Like, you have to work really hard to try to find out that those, pretty girls waving a book at you and saying, "Come to church and sit by me," is really the LDS Church. So this was a fascinating scenario to me.
Yeah, the interesting thing to me is also that John Dehlin is getting special treatment, and I don't know if that's because he's of his popularity. But it's going to be a hard thing for the LDS Church to say that, for 20 years, we've been unaware that John Dehlin has been podcasting under the name Mormon Stories, and now we're going to do something about it. You can sleep on your rights in the law. You can abandon your rights to something in the law. I mean, you can lose real property in a lot less than 20 years if you abandon your rights to it. And you have to do a number of things that qualifies for that. But, and this is not just abandoned by the church. This was put in the back of the pickup truck and driven to the dump. That's what this was done with Mormon. So that's why it's a strong case.
Yeah. And I'll just note here, as we've been pointing out, the timing has been so strange. the church, is it fair to say, Rebecca, you came into contact with these, correct? And
yeah, this is Lucifer's Lantern, who puts out amazing content. And right before the newscast, I'm like, oh, look, this is an interesting kind of maybe more to the story as to why they may be pushing this right now. So everybody go find that. It's on Ex-Mormon Reddit. It's on Lucifer's Lantern, but we're going to cover a few little key points here.
It looks like the church has to renew its trademark on the word Mormon at the latest by November 8th, 2027. In the meantime, when it goes to do that, it has to demonstrate that it uses that term and that is something that it capitalizes on, essentially. And so what was said here is when that time comes, they must prove that they still use the word Mormon in active commerce. USPTO rules are clear on this point. A trademark only survives if the owner can show that it is still printed on actual goods or services that are still being sold or distributed. The official guidelines spell it out at uspto.gov under keeping your registration alive. Here's the tension. For years, the church has tried to distance itself from the word. Leaders asked members to stop using Mormon as a label. The church rebranded its websites. It retired the phrase Mormon messages. It scrubbed the word from manuals. The public campaign insisted that Mormon was inaccurate, misleading, and spiritually harmful. In daily speech, materials, and media, the church's official line is that it does not want to be known as Mormon. But in the legal arena, the institution now argues that the use of the word by others violates its trademark rights. The problem is that trademark law rewards consistent use. The USPTO requires renewal evidence in specific windows. Owners must file a Section 8 declaration between years 9 and 10, and again every 10 years after that. That filing must include a specimen, which is a real example of the mark as it appears on goods or services today. If they cannot show use at all, the regulation is canceled. Now, I'll just note the church is going to play games here. They're going to have the word Mormon on something.
Well, there's a certain book I can think of.
Yeah, they're going to have it on something. And so they get to have a double message and speak out both sides of their mouth. And if it's not pointed out to the USPTO that they're doing that, I'm sure they could get away with it. But it might be interesting if a few people reached out to the USPTO to try to make sure that they were aware of what was going on and why this isn't quite what the church is telling them. That might play out quite interesting. So I'll just note that. And all right, that's the end of that story. It'll be interesting to see what happens here. For us, the trademark isn't a giant deal. I certainly don't want to get into some sort of litigation with the church on my own. But now that I know there's a lawyer working on it, I've had another one reach out, say that they would handle this pro bono. And knowing that the church is going after multiple entities, including asking John to change his branding, we'll see how this all goes. But the church probably needs to start using the term again, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did. Your thoughts?
I think you're right.
Yeah. I mean, I talked about this a couple of weeks ago where we saw Jasmine Rapolli's little short, and she said, "What do Mormons think of Halloween?" And I was like, oh my goodness, because usually they police that so carefully. And again, that article in the, it's on the church website about how it's a key indicator, the word Mormon, and it represents our vision and, whatever else. So they may be doing that out of necessity, but I'm glad to hear, Bill, that there might be some protections or some help for smaller podcasts, that would never, some of us, if we got a letter like that, that would just be it. There's no way that you could do anything about it. So it's good to hear that, perhaps banding together, might be something and we could work together on this. So, but you guys aren't at all concerned about the name of your podcast, just the trademark is off the table, but no one has said you have to be Norman Discussions.
I'm not
Radio Free Norman. Would that be something you would consider?
I know how to say FU in 7 different languages.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, no, they've only asked us to cease our, we actually got the trademark.
Yeah.
And then there's like a 45-day period before it actually becomes official. And that's when other entities get to come in and say, hey, whoa, wait, don't let them do this. We're going to reach out to them. And so we'll see what happens. But they've gone after John more directly, asking him to change his visuals and graphics and presentation.
So ironically, the result of this action by the church over the trademark allows the people with the copycat podcast to go scot-free.
Yep.
Yeah.
Funny how that works.
Yeah.
Are we ready to go on? I guess so. Since I'm in charge, I have to keep reminding myself of that. Sorry about that. Yeah, the next story. This is a really sad story. It involves a toddler. And if you don't like stories like this, you might want to get out of the room for about 7 minutes. KSL Jacob Freeman reports December 4th, 2025. Parents arrested accused of severe pattern of neglect after a child's death. Dateline, Salt Lake City. A man and woman were arrested in Cache County after their 18-month-old child died of malnutrition and dehydration in March. I only underscore that because otherwise it didn't make any sense. I had to go back and say, oh, it was in March that the child died. Authorities announced on Thursday. So that's 9 months ago. They just arrested these people, the parents. The Cache County Sheriff's Office identified the parents as Mitchell and Carrie Murray and said their child died at a residence in Nibley on March 19th. The Sheriff's Office said the investigation began immediately afterward. So they've been doing this for 9 months? I don't know. But here is a captured photo from their Facebook page. This is reported to be the two suspects, Mitchell and Carrie Murray. This was posted, I believe it was, I'm so sorry, April. It was April. It was the following month after their 18-month-old had died. And that is the two with the caption, no matter what is going on in life, peace can always be found in the temple. Now, it is being reported. I bring this up only because it is being reported, and I don't think that anybody really necessarily knows for sure yet. But I could be wrong about that too. It is being reported that Mitchell Murray, or possibly his father, is a first cousin of Chad Daybell. Both hail from Springville, Utah. There's other people saying no, it's the wife of Mitchell Murray. It's Carrie Murray, who's the cousin or whatever. So I see all these things out there. And because it's all out there, I decided at least to address it to say, I got no idea. Different people are saying different things. Ultimately, I guess it doesn't make a hill of beans worth of difference as to who he might be related to. Rebecca, did you have any information about this?
Yeah, there have been different reports. I, of course, have heard the father is Chad Daybell's cousin. That would make the alleged perpetrator, his, what was it, first cousin once removed or second cousin.
No,
anyway, and also,
yeah,
no, I think, I mostly have seen that it is connected to the Daybell. And, I've read posts where people say, yeah, they're all part of the extended family and they're close and they live in Springville. We know that Chad, his whole family and all of that's in Springville. So I would think it's probably has some truth to it, but we don't know for sure yet. So.
Yes. And like I say, it's really not important.
No.
At least to my mind, it makes it more sensational, I think, in certain circles. Follow-up investigative steps conducted by the Cache County Sheriff's Office identified a severe pattern of neglect leading up to the infant's death, the Sheriff's Office said. Authorities were able to use data from baby monitors and surveillance cameras to reconstruct a timeline of the 4 days leading up to the child's death. The Sheriff's Office said for those 96 hours, that's the 4 days, the total time another human being was identified as being present with the child was 49 minutes and 15 seconds. So in other words, less than an hour in 4 days. Investigators also found that the child was out of the crib for a combined 6 hours and 15 minutes. This must be during those same 4 days, and had only 6 diaper changes during that time. The findings of the medical examiner confirmed that the infant died due to complications arising from malnutrition and dehydration, the Sheriff's Office said. Based on these facts and the medical findings, Mitchell and Carrie Murray were taken into custody. Police documents say Carrie Murray works as a nurse. And Mitchell Murray said he works from home and takes care of the children during the day. There was also a 4-year-old child in the home. Lieutenant Mickelson Barchi with the Cache County Sheriff's Office said the Murrays cooperated with the investigation. He said the video of the child's room was difficult for detectives to watch. Watching the video was a very tough task for the detectives the detective singular who was charged with that. It carries a burden, right? To watch a child sit there and be zipped back into its crib for that extensive amount of time, Barchi said. The lieutenant said it was difficult for investigators to understand why the child was left in those conditions. My job is to be that impartial fact finder, and that's our role. And this is one of those that I think a lot of us are going to struggle with why for a long time, Barchi said. And all we have to say to that is what the parents had said, and they didn't view what they had done as necessarily wrong or as a problem. Police documents said the child was primarily fed waffles. And Carrie Murray reportedly told investigators that the child had only eaten baby food once or twice. The documents also said that when investigators asked Carrie Murray, the mother, why she thought the child had died, she guessed SIDS, although that typically only affects infants under a year old. Then, according to the document, she said it was just her time, I guess. The Murrays were both booked into the Cache County Jail on accusations of child abuse and homicide. And there is a reel here that can be played, and I don't know if we need to play it, Bill. If there's any concerns about going long, it's only about less than 3 minutes, but it basically recapitulates this stuff and adds that it was Eggo waffles.
The parents of a Cache Valley toddler accused in her death, as investigators describe a staggering case of neglect.
News Specialist Mike Anderson live for us right now on how technology already in that home actually helped with the investigation. Mike?
Yeah, Mike and Dini, mom and dad, both 31 years old, are being held here at the Cache County Jail without bail after suspicion of aggravated abuse and aggravated murder. And investigators said they were able to see what happened to their 18-month-old daughter with the help of days of recordings from a nanny camera.
Deputies say what happened inside this Nibley home may be difficult to believe.
I think this is hard for a lot of people. I know a lot of guys are going to ask why, and that's an answer that I don't think any of us have.
Lieutenant Michael Barchi says that's in part because the parents, Mitchell and Carrie Murray, seem to believe it was completely normal, despite what he says was malnutrition and dehydration that led to their toddler's death last March.
So that kid was regularly spent time in the crib, zipped up. Someone would show up, give them a Eggo waffle, some peanut butter off it, and a sippy cup is the typical meal. And according to the interviews based on the parents, this was a normal pattern of life.
Investigators say Ruby Murray had less than 1 hour total contact with another human in the whole last 4 days of her life. The interior of the crib was described as very dirty, with old pieces of food.
They had 6 hours out of the crib where a parent had come in, check a diaper, put them on the ground in the same room, and leave them in that room. They never left the room in 4 days.
Detectives say Mitchell Murray described crib days where Ruby remained in the crib all day while he worked from home. Investigators also say Carrie was a nurse at Logan Regional Hospital, where she cared for others, providing medicine, getting them fed and showered. But when asked about her daughter's death, responded that it was her time, I guess, and I feel no guilt over this.
They were cooperative in the investigation. Again, what they relayed to us is that they felt this was an appropriate way to raise a child.
And Intermountain Healthcare, by the way, told us that as soon as they learned of the possible charges that Carrie Murray was put on suspended, and the couple has also a 5-year-old child that is now in the custody of state DCFS. Back to you.
Yeah, those allegations are disturbing. All right, Mike Anderson live tonight. Mike, thank you.
So your thoughts? That goes on to something else that's also related to the story, but here, I want to get your thoughts first, if that's okay.
Well, I will say that, as I read different posts about this on social media, people had looked at the couple's Facebook pages. I didn't have a chance to do that.
By the way, I'm sorry. I'm laughing. Bill's laughing. It's because we're trying to take it down, and he takes it down, and I'm trying to take it down, but I click it right after, and it goes up, and it's been off.
I was going to say,
it's
this
not a
is
funny story, but go
not a
ahead.
laughing matter at
No,
all.
no.
So yeah. Anyway, the reason it may be interesting to Mormonism, and I did see someone in the chat saying that they can confirm they grew up with Mitchell, and his dad is a cousin of Chad Daybell. So, if that's the case, someone said that in the chat. Anyway, apparently on their Facebook page, from what I could gather from other social media, just tons of posts about the temple and the church and all kinds of stuff like that, right? And so you would look at that and think, well, families are forever. We value our family. The family is the most important thing. But unfortunately, it opens this discussion on, LDS parents and having kids, or a lot of kids, or being told to have kids when you're not ready to have kids, or kids just used as kind of, I don't know, ornamental. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but it's just a really tragic story. And I know that they had to GoFundMe and things like that. And then people were kind of like, when they found out more about what allegedly had happened, and just the idea that they don't, all the comments I'm reading are like an 18-month-old. Are you kidding? You're the one that gets maybe half an hour of time away, when you're with that little guy or little girl, you don't do that. A parent doesn't do that. So yeah, this story is really hard to hear, really hard to talk about.
Yeah. Bill?
Yeah. I can only imagine how much a kid is crying, a baby is crying, not getting the attention it needs. Part of me wants to at least give the tiniest bit of grace in situations where, both parents are working. He's working from home. I don't know what he does for a living. I don't know what the rules are around what he does. I know sometimes parents, single moms, for instance, have to leave really young children sort of to watch each other because that single mom has to go off to work and she doesn't have anybody to help her and she's in a dire situation. I don't know what the situation was, but I will just say that we as a society, we as individual sets of parents or even single parents, we've got to find some way to solve this problem than to allow it to play out like this. This kid went 4 days having 1 hour of contact with parents, 6 diaper changes, and was fed the same meal anytime it was fed. Best case scenario, you're going to end up with long-term adverse effects from that. And in the worst case scenario, you get what you got here.
And to state the obvious, which is frequently in my job description, I think, this isn't a child who is healthy and happy and bubbly and bouncy one day, and then it's dead the next. This is a child who goes through a long, painful, horrible process of withering away, malnutrition, crying, screaming, until, they don't do that anymore because now they're limp and not responsive. This all happened. See, this all happened. And it's not like, I'm saying it not to be overly horrific, but this is what the parents saw. The parents knew that this was all happening over an extended period of time. And even if it's something where, they're that stupid and one's a nurse and one's, I don't know, working from home and they look like they live in a nice neighborhood. It's just like, what the heck is going on? And that's why I think the lieutenant is saying, a lot of people are going to ask why. We don't know why. I have a why question, though. I got a why question. You know what my why question is? Why 9 months? That's the question I want you to answer, Lieutenant. Why 9 months? Why do you say that the police started investigating immediately? It took them 9 months? Something's not adding up there. Something's not adding up. Something happened along the way. That this went from being apparently just an unfortunate child death, SIDS, whatever, to all of a sudden becoming a criminal case. And I don't know what that is. But the reason that it strikes me and concerns me is because there was a 4-year-old in the house during the entire time as well, who since turned 5 and was removed and put in foster care upon the arrest of the parents. But that's very concerning that 4-year-old, then 5-year-old, was in the house for 9 months while the police were doing whatever it was that they were doing. It doesn't sound like they were really investigating this case very assiduously.
Do you think someone came forward in that time? Because at the beginning, it did appear, here's a GoFundMe, here's the tragedy, here's the parents posting. At least we have the temple, we're together. The obituary, which I know we're not going to read, but it's glowing, bubbling, happy child, happy family, missed by all relatives. I would think it might take someone during that span of time coming forward and saying it might be different. You might want to look at footage or something. I doubt they grabbed all that footage right away. I don't know.
And that sounds like something that maybe, I don't know, a grandfather might do.
A
What
ward
do you think,
member,
Bill?
they were active.
I was just going to add, even if you go in your head and you try to figure out how something like this happens and you go, okay, the dad just didn't care. Mom left for work. Dad's doing his at-home job and he just doesn't want to give any attention to the kid. Well, that doesn't cut it, because then she comes home from her nursing job and she's also not picking the kid up. She's also not checking in on the child. This child with both parents got 1 hour of attention in the course of 4 days. That is both parents operating from an extreme level of neglect that can't be explained in any rational way.
No. I think someone was asking the question about perhaps they were waiting for the autopsy report. If there was an autopsy performed, and I didn't see whether there was or not, that comes back very quickly. That's not something you have to wait a long time on. I mean, an autopsy is performed, and then they're talking into the microphone as they're doing the autopsy, just like Hooper in Jaws. And then it just gets, transcribed, and then you've got your report and signed off on. So I wouldn't think that would take very long at all. So anyway, like I say, that is a mystery. That's the question that I have as to why. And maybe there's a very good reason for it. I'd be interested in hearing it. Okay, so then, Rebecca, you had brought to my attention Ruby's obituary, which we expect one or both of her parents probably had something to do with writing back in March. Did you want to read this?
I'm okay not reading it. I read it. It was enough. If you want to read it, fine. But to paraphrase it, it's just, she's happy, bubbly, our princess, it just, you would never imagine that there was something darker on the other side of it. But you can go ahead and read it.
And you would never imagine it walking by that house.
Never.
Why would you walk by that house and think that anything wrong is going on inside it?
Yeah.
It looks like a perfectly nice house in a perfectly nice neighborhood, but you never know. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and I can just skip through this. There it is. That was 3 pages, I believe. And then we get to a church statement about Wade Christofferson. I think that's your story, isn't it, Rebecca?
It is. Like I said, I wore red for a reason. Boy, a lot of these stories just make me see red. So yes, we actually talked about this. I kind of jumped onto Mormonism After Dark, didn't I? Impromptu. And we covered this a little bit on Mormonism.
It was the
After
best
Dark.
part of the show.
Was it really? Oh, that's interesting. So, but it's interesting because sometimes the church will do this. They'll make a statement. And like I was alerted to this statement by our friend Martine, who, watches the news as much as I do. And so I'm looking for this statement other places like the church newsrooms. It's nowhere else. It's simply in the Tribune. And I confirmed with the reporter, they just gave it to us. So I'll read this statement. And the reason it's interesting, a lot of it is just what you would expect, kind of the, we don't tolerate child abuse. But some of the time frames that they list in there as far as the actions the church took were interesting to me. So it says, and this again was just part of the article that we went through on our pop-up newscast. And we should tell everybody we did do a pop-up newscast on Friday all about Wade Christofferson because there was new information. So if you haven't had a chance to see that, maybe Bill can put it in the comments or you can go find that. But yeah, we really covered it. And that was the only topic we covered. So, but since that pop-up podcast, this statement has come out. So it says the Salt Lake City-based church said in a statement Friday that one of its leaders in Ohio learned of abuse allegations against Wade Christofferson involving an alleged victim in Utah on the evening of November 6th. Now, if you remember, the FaceTime call and all that happened on November 5th. So here we're hearing that a leader in Ohio learned of abuse in Utah the day after it happened. And then it says, and the church reported to law enforcement the following day. So they're saying that someone, a church leader in Ohio, contacted Utah law enforcement on November 7th. And that's interesting because I couldn't find any kind of police action or looking into anything on November 7th or 8th or 9th or 10th or 11th. It wasn't until the 12th. So it goes on to say the church learned of an additional alleged victim in Ohio on November 11th, the church said, and reported to law enforcement the next day on the 12th. And that is in the DOJ report and other places where they say that they started an investigation. The law enforcement did on the 12th. So in this statement, the church reported the abuse each time from Ohio, and but nothing seemed to have come from the report of Utah. Do you have any explanation for that, RFM?
Yeah, actually, I do. Now that you read it again,
Okay.
and I look at it as you're reading it really
Okay.
closely, we had been presuming that the Ohio father's child disclosed to him that day or earlier,
Mm-hmm.
but probably it was several days later and perhaps under some questioning that disclosure was made. Then the Ohio father would know about the Ohio victim, who is his daughter,
Right.
and reporting it to law enforcement. So I think that may be the answer to that question, but I'm concerned
Maybe.
about the church doing things. The church doesn't do anything. I want to know who called the cops.
Right.
It
But
wasn't anybody at Curtin McConkie.
no, but it does clearly say here that the Ohio church leader called on the 7th, called law enforcement about Utah. So that means the Ohio
About
father.
Utah.
Yes. And
So
I,
he
of
knows
course,
about Utah, right?
yeah.
Because we just found out.
Well, and of course, my scenario allegedly is, there's a father in Utah and it's a relation. I'm not going to go any farther. I think we all know what I believe. And then he called his brother. It was listed as brother in one of the articles and then taken out and said, this has happened in my family. Perhaps the brother then contacted the church there. And then when questioned, his own family member found out it was in his family too. That's all I can think. But there are other articles that say that the man, the father, contacted the police. So it is a little convoluted, but the church's statement said the church called law enforcement right away on the 7th and the 12th. And then we have the report that the law enforcement started investigating on the 12th. Anyway, the rest of the statement says child abuse is inexcusable. The statement reads, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is committed to preventing, reporting, addressing abuse.
Just take the comma out between preventing and reporting, and they'll have it about right.
To preventing reporting. Ah, there you go, RFM. Very good. Leaders and members are directed to stop abuse, support victims, including professional help, and follow all reporting laws. Interesting. The church urges that all abuse be reported to authorities. The rest of the statement continues. Oops, I just lost it for a minute here. Hold on. The church is cooperating fully with authorities in this ongoing investigation. We love and are most concerned for the victims and are offering support. Now, that's interesting too, because so this abuse that is being discussed that happened in 2025 or more recently really has nothing to do with happening at church, happening with church leaders. I believe this is entirely a family affair. So it's interesting that they're saying the church is cooperating. The only way the church would be involved, of course, is if either of the fathers contacted their ecclesiastical leader and then they, as it says here, reported to the police. There is no place in any article or news outlet that I have found that discusses the alleged abuse from the 80s and 90s, early 2000s. And that, I believe, is because it is alleged. There's a number of victims, like a dozen. And, I feel like we'll see some kind of civil something. But they do say they're going to continue to cooperate. So that's kind of interesting.
I doubt that they're cooperating yet. This is the kind of just stuff that the church says and other big companies say they're not cooperating with law. What would that look like? What would the church do to be cooperating with law enforcement in this investigation?
No, and it didn't happen on church property. This is a family affair. This is something
I can't see that they're doing anything.
Yeah, I think so too. And so just to kind of reiterate, I thought this Fox News article about it had some details that I hadn't read before. And so it says charging documents show that on November 5th, the father of a Utah girl was speaking with Christofferson. Okay, I didn't know that before. The phone call was the father and Wade Christofferson on the phone together, who was in Dublin, Ohio. Wade. During the conversation, Christofferson allegedly asked the father to speak to his 7-year-old daughter, right? And that's where everything unfolded. And the dad heard something strange. And, I hate to even just read the details because it's just too much. And then what I thought was interesting is the article says the father retrieved the letters that Christofferson had previously sent to the 7-year-old girl and found, the codes, because Wade was using code words to get the little girl to do things. So they have the letters. RFM, would that be an open and shut case, handing over the letters of a code trying to manipulate and groom a young girl?
I think that this is probably, I don't think the jury's going to be out very long.
Yeah, I didn't realize they actually had the letters, but they did. He was able to check it. Then the other new piece of information from this particular article in Fox News says the father called Christofferson, who then allegedly admitted to using the terms in the letter and to sexually abusing his daughter while on an earlier visit to Utah.
And that's why the jury's not going to be out very long.
Exactly. He has admitted everything. And then here's where maybe those dates kind of play in. Following these admissions, the Utah father, and again, they're not saying any family relation. Now they're just saying a man and a man, right? And the Utah father learned of a 10-year-old Ohio girl who Christofferson had also allegedly abused. During a conversation with the Ohio father, Christofferson also admitted to inappropriate touching the daughter 15 to 20 times. Then the Ohio girl's father contacted the police on November 12th. So I've seen this multiple places that the father called the police. Maybe they're meaning he contacted the church, who then contacted the police, a middleman kind of a scenario. But it is a little convoluted to me.
It is. But following the admissions, you see that line?
Uh-huh.
That's the unspecified amount of time.
Okay. And that makes sense.
We don't know how long went by, 5 minutes or 5 days.
Right. Even so, here it says that the father called the police. And in the church statement, it said that a church authority called someone in Utah about the Utah abuse and said this is going on.
And here's the thing. We're going to find out that this is what I predict. We're going to find out that the Utah father, something like the elders quorum president or the first counselor in the bishopric, the church is choosing to designate that as a church leader.
Yeah, I already checked into that.
Take credit for it by saying the church called law enforcement.
Yeah. I had a source check every name Christofferson in any leadership position in that stake and the nearby stakes. Yeah, that's how weird I am. Nobody. I know.
Does he have any daughters? I mean, is this possible? This is a son-in-law, hence a different last name.
Good point.
And that is possible. That's possible. However, in talking to friends of the family, the children, the younger children, sons, I believe it might be sons, just given the ages. So anyway, all that's conjecture. Okay, let's move on. That was just trying to show that the statement was a little weird and maybe there'll be more information that comes out. So I've been trying to figure out this whole thing about the annotation and church discipline and all of this. So I'll go into this just for a minute. I'm calling this Wade Christofferson's path back to membership. And in trying to figure this out, I have two sources that I'm going to use here. One is somebody who has been in church leadership for 10 years and dealt firsthand with all this kind of annotation and rebaptism and excommunication. Okay, 10 years. All right. The other source is somebody who has worked for the church in departments that touch this kind of, action and scenario for 10 years. So, and as recently as 5 years ago. So, or even sooner. So
I thought you were going to call this part Wade Christofferson's path back to pederasty.
Well, I don't know that word, but I'll look it up. I can only guess what it means. That's right. Okay. So a lot of these are statements that I got from either of my source just to kind of learn about this. And here's something I'd forgotten. We're so fixated on the annotation and when was it removed. We forgot the time frame of rebaptism, right? It's a lengthy process. That it's not just I'm excommunicated, I'm back, my annotation is removed. That is not true. So this kind of sheds a little bit of a spotlight on it. It says an excommunication, again, these are from my two sources that I described. An excommunication usually has to last for a year or two. Okay, so you go through a court and you can't come back until there's a year. At the end of the year, they could meet with their bishop, their stake president, and have a disciplinary council to consider rebaptism. You have to reconvene the court, right, to get rebaptized. That application is sent to the office of the first presidency for approval, and it includes all the details. When you're excommunicated, it goes to Salt Lake with all the details of why, and it's, entered into the system. And when you want to be rebaptized, that meeting also goes to the first presidency. If approved, you can be rebaptized. Okay, so that's 1 year, right? You can be baptized after a year, best case scenario. And Bill, you can probably, about this too, because you're a bishop, and anybody in the chat who's been in, positions like this, you can kind of see if I'm explaining it correctly or give added insight. So then after another year, right, a year after rebaptism, they can be considered for temple and priesthood blessings to be restored. I think I knew that, but then I'd forgotten that. So that's a whole nother year, right, to get everything back that you had before. This is another meeting with the stake president and an application, but not a full disciplinary council. This step includes input from the victims, okay? And I've learned about this too, with people reaching out saying, you know, there was somebody in my family that abused the children. He wanted to be rebaptized. They asked us to write letters. We wouldn't do it because how traumatizing. And they still went ahead with, you know, rebaptism and annotation removal. So they may request letters and input, but I think it's kind of like those sealing cancellation letters. If you don't get back to him, it's more important that the person continue on his spiritual journey, even if he's harmed others. So
It's the law of Sarah, still alive in the church.
yes, that's exactly right. So if approved in these cases is involving CSA, there would be a meeting with the 70. This is important. A lot of this has to do with 70 getting involved and making decisions about who goes, who stays. If the 70, and that means that somebody from the quorum, one of the quorums of the 70s, is satisfied after an interview with this person, then he will reordain them right there on the spot, right? So the 70s are assigned to go out and interview these people who are applying to have their blessings restored. They are now considered in full fellowship, and they can have a temple recommend, and they can serve in callings with adults. Okay.
Does that mean only with adults?
Only with adults at this point. This is the part I didn't realize. They really are trying to put some protections in place, but there's so many areas where things can go wrong. And that's what I kind of learned. So I just want to point out that a lot of this process of getting back involves the 70s. 70s are assigned to go out and interview these people. 70s and general authorities review the cases, they review the information. And I just want to point out D. Todd's interaction and role in the 70s during this time. So I'm thinking Wade was excommunicated approximately 1996 is what victims are alleging. Okay. Again, this is all from victims. And so that means 1997, maybe he's trying to get rebaptized. 1998, he's trying to get his temple blessings and priesthood restored. You know, it's all kind of in that time frame. And at the same time, D. Todd Christofferson is in the quorum of the 70, starting in 1993. And not only that, but he's in the presidency of the quorum of the 70 in 1998. And it's kind of explained to me by my sources that it kind of makes sense that the presidency might be assigning some of these assignments to go out and interview these people for, you know, rebaptism. So I don't know, make of that what you will.
Well, here's what I make of it, okay? Unless there's a strict method put in place to erect a Chinese wall immediately upon something like this happening, okay? Of course he's going to know, because the guy who's handling it, if it's not him, is going to go, hey,
dude,
you know, D. Todd, is this your brother?
Yeah. No, that's what I believe too. And I was trying to just kind of allude to that so that others could draw that conclusion. But he was basically in charge of the 70, and they are the ones that are out there interviewing people and making decisions. And, you know, then with the approval of the first presidency, but the man on the ground is the 70. I know there are a lot of 70s, but I still feel someone in the presidency would have something to do with it. So,
I would hope that as an attorney who must have taken and passed the ethics section of the bar exam, that he would have recused himself from any participation in those decisions relating to his brother.
yeah, I don't know, but you see again and again, what did he know and when did he know it? You know, I'm just trying to kind of paint a little bit of picture. It's all, of course, alleged and we don't know. But so my source goes on to say if there's no CSA and it's adultery, there's no 70 interview required, and this step is delegated to a stake president. And again, there's that idea that we've heard from victims that the rumor in the ward was that Wade was excommunicated back in 96 for adultery, right? Not CSA. However, my comment on that is so many victims allegedly have said once his friend, the bishop and stake president, was released and there was a new bishop, that new bishop back in the 90s started asking the girls, has there ever been any inappropriate contact? These are what the victims are telling us. And the girls are saying to him as the bishop, yes. And the bishop is saying back, other girls have come forward. And then he was excommunicated instantly. So if he was excommunicated and they somehow made it just for adultery, and this bishop back in the 90s knew that all these girls, CSA was happening, then he's the one that really unleashed this wolf, out into the fold for the next 20 years. So I don't know, but that's my take on if it was for adultery. So finally, after all this, there would be a separate process for annotation, right? So we've got excommunication, rebaptism, restoration of temple blessings and priesthood, and then annotation. They really do try to put these things in order for people. And again, victims would be asked for input, and if approved, this is just administrative, and it's literally a click of a button and the annotation is removed. It's
And
so
once the annotation
fascinating.
is removed, it means that nobody has access to the information that of this guy's past CSA stuff.
It never happened. Yep, it never happened. And my question is, why would that ever be removed? Why would that ever be removed, ever? I don't know why it would be. Yeah.
Can you refresh our recollection of why it is we think it has been removed?
Because one of the victims talked to a stake president, and it was confirmed to the victim. Again, so much of this is just, alleged, but there's so many victims and their stories are so consistent. There is a victim that talked to a stake president, and he confirmed, yes, there had been an annotation and it had been removed. And again, I say, if there wasn't an annotation, the bishop that excommunicated him absolutely knew he was on a fact-finding mission, talking to the young women saying, has Wade done something inappropriate? He knew. So if he purposely did not excommunicate him for that or put an annotation, then that's a huge, failure of the system. So, okay, so this is interesting too. So first of all excommunicated members seeking to receive full fellowship blessings again, that means temple endowment sealings, must go through a restoration of blessings interview. That's what it's called, with a member of the Q70. Okay, so this is my source who works for the church, so it's a little more specific. The names are submitted through a process that this person is not fully aware of, but they must pass through the R&C committee, the Restoration and Cancellation Committee. All these committees sound like Harry Potter, don't they? I mean, seriously, there's really a Restoration and Cancellation Committee. I'm sorry, that just, I don't know.
It's next door to the Wizarding and Glass Looking Committee.
Right. And here we go. And the interviews are assigned out to the Q70, right? Both for in office, meaning somebody would come to headquarters and have an interview, and to complete the interviews while attending state conference, you go to where the person is while you're away from church headquarters. So this person corroborates what the other person told me, that, yeah, the 70s handle it, and they have to talk to somebody one-on-one in person in order to do this restoration of blessings. They're always in-person interviews. When those interviews are entirely confidential, the general authority conducting the interview receives a printout with several pages of information, including notes on the reason for the excommunication, the disciplinary hearing, and the High Council stake president, and the progress of their repentance. These interviews take 40 to 45 minutes. Wade would have needed to have one of those interviews before he was called as a member of the bishopric. So I'm just trying to show all the touch points, all the people that would have read all of his information along the way. And I agree with you, RFM, unless there was a Chinese wall, I don't know how almost everybody would have known. And I'm going to show you something later that absolutely confirms it for me. So just to reiterate, excommunication, rebaptism, restoration of temple blessings, and removal of the annotation, it can take, that's like 3 years, more than 3 years, right?
3 years, that'd be like getting your Eagle Award in 3 years.
It would be. And it's a process, and people are, trying to make their way back. And as I talked to my one source who was in leadership for 10 years, definitely got the sense that, there is concern for the alleged perpetrators or convicted perpetrators' spiritual growth, and they try very hard to balance that if they can, with the safety of the congregation and wanting to integrate the person back into it, which again, I say there are some things you don't come back from. That's what I think. There are some things you just are not allowed to come back from. Okay, so here's the question. What is an annotation on a membership record? How is it added? How is it removed? And again, my sources are someone in leadership for 10 years and someone who worked for the church for 10 years. Got some interesting information on that. So this is actually from the handbook. These are the reasons that you would have an annotation. Do you want to read these, RFM, so that it's just not my voice?
Why are you having me read these?
Well, I don't know, because
Incest.
you sound like a lawyer. These are the reasons. You don't have to read the whole thing. Just kind of go down the
Incest.
list. Uh-huh.
Incest, sexual abuse of a child or youth, sexual exploitation of a child or youth, or serious physical or emotional abuse of a child or youth.
Mm-hmm.
Involvement with child pornography,
Mm-hmm.
plural marriage, adult sexual predatory behavior, embezzling church funds or stealing church property, church welfare abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's up there with incest, huh?
That's what I thought was strange.
Oh my gosh. I know in the outside world, one would be a lesser felony and one would be a greater felony, a much greater felony.
Right. That's why I'm having you read it. Yeah. Or threatening behaviors, things such as, sexual violence. So, yeah, that's an interesting list. I
Or
thought.
conduct. Wait a second. Threatening behavior or conduct that harms the church.
Exactly. Yeah. So if anyone wants to know why somebody might have an annotation on their record, the person in leadership I talked to said they had only seen CSA. That was it.
None of the others, huh? So I
None of
probably
the
don't have
others.
an asterisk on my name.
Yeah, who knows what they have for us?
The
I don't
threatening
have any
behavior for
idea.
the church. Of
But
course.
Here, right from the handbook, I'm just going to read it one more time for all those naysayers that say I'm making it up, that the first presidency is responsible. It says when a bishop receives an annotated membership record, he follows the instructions in the annotation. And we'll get into that. Only the first presidency may authorize removing an annotation from a membership record. If the stake president recommends removing an annotation, he uses form this, go to this site, and the office of the first presidency notifies him if the recommendation is approved or not. So it does start from the stake level, but it is the first presidency that says, yay, like gladiators. I was just in a Capua a couple weeks ago, down or up, right?
Well, I'm overwhelmed by all the clerical duties the first presidency has, and it makes me wonder when they have time to receive revelation and talk with God.
Well, it's mostly because they don't really do these duties, and we'll find this out. They have a whole bunch of people underneath them that do the duties and give them recommendations. That's how it works. So the person in leadership told me in the past, when records were made of paper, right? Like your record actually arrived made out of paper to your ward, and they'd say, we have received the record. It was actually a paper record. And that's when there was an asterisk that indicated a record had been annotated. The stake president would call Salt Lake to find out what the asterisk means. It's not immediately clear. And yeah, exactly. I need to find out what this is. Yeah, you had to really do some due diligence to figure out what the little annotation meant. The bishop and the ward clerk could see the annotation, and the bishop could make some notes on the record so that it would kind of follow the person. If there were, some things that it needed to, let the next bishop know. Once records became automated, each member has a one-page record, and there is actually a red flag on the record. It's no longer a little asterisk. It's a red flag that the record has been annotated, but no other kinds of information. The stake president would still have to put in a call or a request for information for what the red flag specifically means. So they are trying to protect the privacy of the person. I understand that. And hopefully leaders would take that step, and find out exactly what that person, might be of concern. But here's what I thought was interesting, and what makes me realize they really are trying to do something to protect people, but it's just, there are just too many ways it can go wrong. So a red flag will not let leadership enter that certain person for a calling. If it's somebody other than the bishop who can't see it, for example, you have an elders quorum president. He's like, oh, this guy would be great. We want to have him work with the youth. You try to type his name in. It's all done online. It won't even accept it. It won't even accept it. And a letter is sent to the stake president or the bishop saying, this person is trying to add this person for a calling. And as you know, it doesn't work. And then they'll kind of handle it internally. So they really are trying to keep people out of callings that they shouldn't be in, working with youth.
That's an after the fact though, right? Like the elders quorum president's already had the thought in his head to call the person. He's already sat down with the person.
Yeah.
They've already called them and set them apart. That person's already started their calling before the elders quorum president gets around to sitting down in the clerk's office.
Enter it.
Oh, yeah, I've got to put this in still.
Yeah, I don't know. And I didn't know the process. Do they try to submit it first before they actually call and they're bumped out? Or, yeah, I'm not sure of that process.
That's not the way it worked in the old days when I was bishop.
Okay.
That was an after thing that you did.
And I guess they had to get around the red flag too.
Yeah. No, it gets even more convoluted.
The
So
red flag is interesting to me, though, because it suggests a lawyer's influence only because a red flag is kind of famously known as the marking, at least in Westlaw, that signals a court opinion that has been reversed and should not be cited to for
interesting.
authority.
Well, lawyers are all over this, as we'll see. So how is an annotation added to a record? You might wonder this, right? Well, how did it even get there? A stake president can annotate the record, for example, for CSA. Also, if there's a membership court, the details of the discipline are sent to Salt Lake, right? As soon as you're excommunicated, you have a file and it's sent to Salt Lake, and then it's kind of input. And if they see certain words like CSA, they just hit the button. A clerical assistant will automatically flag that as they go through the details of the court. They will annotate the record. Isn't that interesting? I didn't
But
know
the
that
clerical assistant is a human being. It's a person,
Yes.
right?
Yes, it would be a
Okay.
person.
So
Yeah,
not
isn't that
technically automatically.
No. Can you imagine being there all day reading through? Maybe it'd be interesting. I don't know. But that's how you get an annotation or a red flag on your record. This was interesting. The leadership source I spoke to in LDS leadership for 10 years had seen a dozen or so annotations for CSA during a 10-year tenure. A 10-year tenure. Sorry.
That's good.
Yeah. But a dozen in one state,
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's more than one. I mean, if you got 10 wards,
Yeah.
that's more than one award.
Yeah. Yeah. LDS parents, please pay attention to this stuff with your kids in church.
And
All
these are
right.
just the annotations he's seeing.
Yeah,
Not to mention the ones that are roaming free.
exactly. So then the other question is, how is a membership record annotation removed? This is key to the Wade Christofferson scenario. The stake president will request it. They'll see that the person has done the repentance process. It's important for the person to get back among the body of the saints, full fellowship, work with people. It was a long time ago what happened. Those are the kind of reasons that a stake president, would say, we got to move forward with this. So he's already been rebaptized. He's already had his blessings restored. And now it's time to remove the annotation. So it's as if it never happened, right? You can move free and unfettered among any calling that you want. The victims are asked for input. A bishop and a stake president can give input. Now, here's what's interesting. A general authority interview is required, as we talked about before, to return to membership after excommunication and have the annotation removed. And again, only the first presidency can do this. Now, this is what was fascinating to me. You ask, how does the first presidency do all this? According to my source, there's a group of 7 general authorities that review, like they come into the office and there's a stack on their desk. They review all these requests for rebaptism and for having an annotation removed. They read through the paperwork, they read the recommendations, and then the notes and their recommendation are sent to the first presidency, who has the final say. There's an awful lot of paperwork. Think about sealing cancellations and now these annotations. I had no idea, but apparently it is reviewed by a general authority, 70-level person, all these stacks of papers, all this process. And again, it just makes me wonder who knew what when. Did you guys know this is how it worked?
No.
I know. That's why I find this fascinating. Probably everyone in the audience in the chat is falling asleep, but I found it fascinating and I think it's super relevant. So again, I bring up, with all these process, all these general authorities, these 70s reviewing all these records, D. Todd Christofferson was in charge of the 70 in 1998, right about the time when his brother would have been going through this process if he truly was excommunicated in 96, like so many victims have alleged.
So he's got 2 obvious ways to find out. One is at home and one is at the office.
Yeah, I didn't even bring up the at home, where we find out that in 2018, a family member talked to, an area rep, and we'll talk about that too. So yeah, this is just simply at the office. How might he have come across this? Or would one of these general authorities come across his brother's name and go, we can't tell D. Todd? I mean, is that what would have happened?
No, of course they would tell him. These guys are buddies. They all work at the same place.
I know. Yep. And it gets worse. I'll show you that. So here's the most fascinating part of everything that I learned, I think. Did the LDS Church watch the media for stories that could damage the church? Is upper leadership aware of these stories or the potential stories? What do you guys think? Do they watch? Do they care? Are they scrutinizing
things? I think they're so clueless. not only do I think they're not aware of potential stories, I don't think they're aware of stories that are actually happening.
I don't know. I think you're wrong. Here we go. So this is what my source inside the church says. The public affairs department is headed by 2 lawyers. Okay. Always 2 lawyers. One is a member of the 12 and one is a member of the 70. When my source worked there, it was Von Keach of the 70 and it was D. Todd Christofferson of the Quorum of the 12 who headed this public affairs department as part of his duties, with Gary Stevenson, another apostle, assisting. On a spreadsheet, they track all the news stories which may damage the church, both those being covered by the news and those that are prospective news stories, usually reported to church headquarters by leaders, area public affairs specialists, area reps. You know, they're going to report back to the church that there was a potential ticking time bomb.
That's prospective, isn't it?
I think so.
Okay.
They hold weekly meetings to stay up to date with general changes and not infrequently held meetings for emergency issues, right? Ticking time bombs out there. They also had weekly committee meetings with several higher church leaders and Curtin McConkie to discuss important updates. And Christofferson's weekly reported the issues to senior leaders. So for those that say, I'm sure that D. Todd Christofferson knew nothing or had nothing to do with, stories out there. His literal job was to track and to manage and to watch and to be the listener and to, see what perhaps an area rep had heard and, put it on a spreadsheet. This might come out. This might happen, right? And so that brings me to this, that in 2018, according to an alleged victim who later reaches out to Floodlit, she told Apostle D. Todd Christofferson's relative that approximately 2018, Wade Christofferson had sexually abused her when she was a child, and the relative notifies Todd. So that's at home. Here in early 2025, an alleged victim allegedly told an area authority, you talked about him before, RFM, and explains, about the CSA. So this is exactly the kind of thing that Todd would have been tracking. An area authority probably would have recognized that name, would have reported back to the church. It would have ended up on the spreadsheet. Now, I don't know that he was working in that department when all this came out in 2025. My source had left since then, but he definitely knew how to synthesize information, I think is my point. So that's the end of that. I just wanted to throw this out there, that they're much more savvy about gathering information and keeping their ear to the ground than I think we even know. And this shows it. So anyway, long way around it. Any final thoughts from you guys?
Bill?
Yeah. I'll put this back up on the screen. And I underlined a few parts here. This middle paragraph to me just enrages me. Child abuse is inexcusable, of course. The statement reads, this is the church's statement on this. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is committed to preventing, reporting, and addressing abuse. Now, if they were into preventing abuse, they would take every rational step that 15 prophets, seers, and revelators in a room could think of that would create safety protocols so that children don't get abused. One simple one, rather than forcing it to be the parent's responsibility or the kid's responsibility to request that there be 2 adults in the room, it should just be mandatory that there are 2 adults in the room. Remember what Sam Young got excommunicated for? If they were into reporting, they would report. As we pointed out on numerous occasions, when they have the option to both report and not report, Curtin and McConkie, the church helpline, instructs the local leader to not report. If they were into addressing abuse, they would be more than happy to step up to a microphone and answer all the questions around this case so that we can all learn that we're mistaken about how this all played out and that the church had its hands clean. A church that does not want to answer questions about any of this is not into addressing anything. Now, if they hadn't said it twice, look at the bottom sentence. The church urges that all abuse be reported to authorities when the church itself doesn't report all abuse to authorities. This is a system that talks out both sides of its mouth. And if you're a believer out there, you're an apologist out there, why do you make excuses for an institution that does one set of things, which is we're not going to create all the protocols we could to protect kids. When local leaders have the option to report or not report, we're going to tell them not to report. And we are never going to step to the camera, to the microphone, and address abuse in the ways that are needed to create transparency and accountability. Why do you believe them when they say this, when this is just lies? This isn't true. This is a church that is talking out both sides of its mouth and not being honest. It wants the media to think one thing. It wants the national press to think one thing, and it does something completely different.
Yeah, the church did not urge that all abuse be reported to authorities in the Bisbee, Arizona case.
Or that bishop that we had played the TikTok from last week. They don't. There's numerous cases. In fact, every time it makes its way to the media where the church had an abuse case happen in a state that both allows or allows you to report it or to not report it, in every instance that we get word of, the church told the local leader, you've got both options, don't report it. Don't report it. Well, what if I do? Well, if you do, then you'll be responsible for anything that happens. And the only way that we're going to cover you in terms of the church's law team is that you follow our directions and you don't report it. This is a church that lies to you. It's lied hundreds of times. I'm used to it. But maybe some of you should wake up to it. This is a church that lies to your face.
Okay. Well, let's see what we have next. Oh, this will bring the mood up, I'm sure. Ex-teacher Raymond Castillas gets 8 years in prison for molesting student. Now, this is from 2016. Okay. So this brings it up to the present. But this was a member of the church who was, I think, in a bishopric at the time in San Antonio. And this is from an article that is from the San Antonio News. Here's a picture of him, probably a booking photo. He was a teacher. So in 2016, this is the reporting. A former Southside Independent School District teacher was sentenced Thursday to 8 years in prison for molesting a student in 2011 when she was 13. Happened at school. Raymond Casillas, who taught English at Matheny Middle School, had originally been charged with aggravated sexual assault of a child, but pleaded no contest to indecent contact with the child as part of a plea deal, agreeing to a fine of $1,500 and a prison term of up to 10 years. State District Judge Jefferson Moore made it 8 years, his lawyer, Pat Hancock, said. Casillas invited an 8th grade student, now 15, as of 2016, to his classroom for lunch in December 2011, locked the door and groped her, then forced her to perform sex acts on him. The girl told a forensic interviewer at Child Safe. According to court documents, he made it a practice to invite other students to his room during lunch period where they would eat and sometimes watch movies. A school district lawyer has said Casillas worked at Southside ISD from October 15, 2007 to April 16, 2013, had been an English, language arts, and math teacher and special education aide at Matheny and resigned for personal reasons. This is something that happened after he entered a no contest plea, which is still a plea. He still tried to do some kind of habeas corpus relief, complaining about ineffective assistance of counsel, going up to the Court of Appeals. And this is their certification saying this is to advise that the court has denied without written order the application for writ of habeas corpus. That was from January of 2017. So he serves his time. Oh, by the way, this is the front and end of a 4-page letter that he wrote to the judges as part of that habeas corpus request for relief. You can see it's dated 18 October 2016. And finally, at the end, the reason this is of some interest at the end is because he actually says that when he was arrested, which was a year and a half, 2 years later, when he was arrested, he was serving as bishop. Okay. He says, I have been a member for 26 years of the church. and was leading as bishop at the time of arrest. And there it is, signed by him. That didn't avail him a lot in the Court of Appeals, but it does establish he was bishop at the time of his arrest. This is how it looks on Floodlit with Raymond Casillas, which ends up, I think, recapitulating a lot of that information. But there is an update on November 10th. So this is a month ago, and we've got an update on this as well. But Raymond Casillas called to be in the High Council in San Antonio, Texas. So it appears that after all of this happened, after he served his jail time, after he was reinstated, as of November 10th, 2025, the headline was, Ray Casillas was sustained as a stake High Council member in Texas yesterday. And this got some attention, as you might expect. They have a number of other items there under Floodlit. We've covered most of them as part of that article. And there's the reference to the handwritten letter. So as of March 2024, let's go back up here. Casillas' parole ended on February 24th, 2024. He was released in April 2021. Parole ends 2024. And as of March 2024, he lived in San Antonio, Texas as a registered sex offender. Casillas may have served as an elders quorum president in his local LDS ward since his release from prison, according to a source who requested anonymity. We are attempting to confirm this information. Please contact us. That's the good people at Floodlit, by the way. Please contact them if you know anything about this case. So I've got a question for you now, Rebecca and Bill.
Yeah.
What happened when they put Raymond Casillas' name in for the calling of High Council?
Well,
High priest in
all
the High
hell
Council, and it
broke
didn't
loose.
kick it out, I guess. What's
No,
going on?
exactly. No, I'm sure he has the annotation removed, and I helped Floodlit figure out a lot of these dates. And what's interesting is that this alleged abuse, I guess it's not alleged anymore, he went to prison for it, happened in 2011, right? When he was in a bishopric. But in 2013, he could sit in front of the stake president and go, yes, I accept that calling as a bishop. I feel completely worthy to be a bishop, knowing what he had done 2 years ago, right? Then he serves as a bishop until early 2014, where he's arrested because the student comes forward, right? Then he, court, he's in jail and everything. And it was actually on October 12th that he was sustained as a high counselor. Prior to that, he was also put in as a gospel doctrine teacher. So we had two callings, right?
Mm-hmm.
All hell breaks loose when they find out he's going to be a high counselor, as you can imagine. That tells me that, his annotation, well, maybe not necessarily, because that annotation is kind of only for youth callings, right? If you're rebaptized, have your blessings restored before the annotation, you can have a calling with adults, according to my source. So that could be it. But anyway, everybody just went ballistic. And then Floodlit had reached out to me to say, is it true? We hear that he has been removed. And so I contacted my source, and we had checked it on November 10th. He was indeed a high counselor. He was still there. But as of, a couple of days ago when I checked it, he was only a gospel doctrine teacher. So sometime between November 10th and now, he has been removed from the High Council. And that's activism, I think.
Apparently.
Yeah.
Apparently that's the case. If all these things mean what you think they mean. Wow. Mm-hmm. I hope that he's been removed. I'm shocked that he got put there. But given the fact that he was apparently, then good that he's been removed. It should not take a hue and cry to cause this, but if that's what it takes, then I'm glad we did it. And I say we, I mean, a lot of people did it. Let me show you some examples of this, okay? Sex offender set apart as a stake high councilman. This was on ex-Mormon Reddit. San Antonio, Texas, Pecan Valley Stake. Had stake conference today. A man was sustained as brand new stake high councilman named Raymond Casillas. You can read about him here. Then he gives a link to Floodlit. He's a convicted sex offender who spent 5 years in prison for sexual acts with one of his middle school students. Letters were sent to the area authority, posts made on Facebook, and even an email sent to the local newspaper. I've tried raising as much of a stink as I can, and they still call him and set him apart. So if you're bored, go put the church on blast for protecting yet another sexual predator. This is happening right now. November and December, 2025, where they're taking this guy and making him into a high councilman. By the way, for those of you who are not familiar with the structure of the LDS Church, you got your ward, which is your congregation. You got a bishop over the ward. Over the bishop is the stake president, but the stake president has 2 counselors, and he's got a group of 12 guys in addition to that, who are the high council. So in the structure of the church, they're over a bishop. They're up there with the stake president. And he is going to be one of these guys. And he was one of these guys in the high council, for crying out loud.
Don't you think, RFM, that what I just described that I learned from my source about the public affairs department, where they kind of keep their eye on this kind of thing, that maybe there was pressure from above down to that stake saying, you guys got to do something about this. This is bad PR. Maybe.
I would hope so. I mean, I would hope that there would be people responsible at the top monitoring crap, that all their amateurs, because these guys are amateurs, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not being paid. I mean it strictly as an amateur. The stake president's not being paid. You know, people are going to make mistakes. They try and spell it out in the handbook, which is incredible. Now it's huge. Who can even deal with it? And it's interminably boring. You know, it's just not very user friendly. Let's put it that way. So you're going to get mistakes. I would like for there to be people to correct that. And I would hope that that's what happened here. But I think the reason it happened is because a hue and cry was raised. So you've got Protect Every Child writing on December 2nd that Raymond Casillas, convicted child sexual abuser, former middle school teacher, was set apart on November 9th, 2025 as a member of the San Antonio, Texas Stake High Council of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. What the actual hell, this person is writing. Was he even ever excommunicated? Was his church record even ever flagged? Or once again, is it only ever the innocent, victimized person within Mormonism, past, present, and future, who gets the life sentence of the social ostracizing, the abandonment, the intense shaming and gossiping, the gaslighting, the victim blaming, the 100% Darvo betrayal of Mormon social and ecclesiastical injustice? Where were this 8th grade victims' Mormon defenders? Amid all the 500 effing letter writers? Nowhere. Our special thanks and gratitude once again to the team at #Floodlit for researching and breaking this story. We were also contacted by concerned PEC supporters over this. I believe it's Protect Every Child, PEC supporters over this development in Raymond Casillas' LDS history. So, great for Protect Every Child. Good job for everybody who had anything and everything to do with making this public and bringing this to the attention of people. And I think that he would not have been released if indeed he has been released. And I hope that that's what your information is saying, Rebecca. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't have happened. The church does not take child sexual assault seriously. Okay, so the next story. Oh, I like this one. This message that you sent me from one of your sources.
Well,
do you
at the
ever
time,
sleep?
I have to say, at the time I was in Italy, and I forgot that nobody else in the world was. And so when I was trying to confirm, you know, his ecclesiastical resume there, I texted somebody that would have been like 4 a.m. So the next morning they're like, "Do you ever sleep? You know, here's the information."
Well, I get texts from you at 4 a.m. here.
It's true. It wasn't just Italy. I know. I never sleep.
Oh, here's something. I think this is Bill's story about the 2025 Brodies Awards.
Yeah, I was notified today that the nominations for the Brodies Awards have begun. So these are generally collected in November, December. So this year, December. And then, so the nominations are taking place right now. This just opened up today. And I will put that link into the live chat for both the 2025 Brodies Awards, as well as the 2025 Ex-Mormon of the Year. And so I'm posting those right now. The first one coming into the live chat is the Brodies Awards themselves. And then this has sort of always been separate, but the Ex-Mormon of the Year those nominations have opened up. And so, folks, you can go in, you can nominate. They have multiple categories. I'll just I'll put up here on the screen. On the left-hand side here, collecting nominations for the 2025 Brodies Awards. On the right-hand side is the ex-Mormon of the Year. You can pause your video right now and you can read through that if you want, but it's just giving sort of the setup of how that all works. I know, RFM, you added some things, so I wanted to check in and see what you were wanting to say here. Oh, you're muted, my friend.
Those are just a few of the past Brodies Awards that Radio Free Mormon has collected, including the Are You Muted Brodies Award. I'm especially proud of that one. I got that all years.
You deserve it.
You have won a lot of them. I've been lucky enough to be piggybacked on a few of them with you, but you've won a lot of them, and you take up, as you can see here, pretty much an entire page with just Radio Free Mormon's Brodies Awards. I did not put this in the slideshow. This was RFM. So good job.
Wow.
And here's an insight into my character, okay? If you know me at all, you'll know that all I can see in this entire slide is 2023 strikeout.
Yeah.
What happened that year? What
Oh,
happened?
they finally voted Mormon Stories as best podcast for the year.
There you go.
I think they were feeling bad after so many years, just voting for me.
Like a token vote.
John put out some good content that year. It was really
I think it was exceptional year for John Dehlin.
There you go. So with this, the year-long awards, Best New LDS Interest Content Creator, Best LDS Interest Podcast, Best LDS Interest Video Channel, Best LDS Interest Discussion Community Forum, Interest Blogger Magazine, LDS Interest Informational Site. Those are the all year long. And then you have the specific projects. So Best LDS Interest Book, Fiction, Narrative Nonfiction, Non-Narrative Nonfiction. And again, there are tons of materials that are
Historical Pastoral.
Can I just say, no, I've been reading comments on these categories and people are like, what the hell? Like, they're crowdsourced categories, but there is a little bit of a complaint that these are so niche and specific that they don't even know how to nominate someone or what they would nominate them for.
Yeah.
So hopefully people will, try, but I can see by you reading them, it is a little confusing. How would you, say you have this author in this book and you want to nominate, it would be maybe a little confusing how you would do that. So I have seen that as feedback on social media, just saying.
Yeah. And I heard that as well, but I will share with you that behind the scenes, these folks are aware of the great work that's been done over the course of the last year. And they try to create categories to ensure that the 2 or 3 really incredible projects that have happened in that realm have a chance to get some recognition. So while you're noting it as being very specific and maybe so rigid that only a handful of things would fit, that's actually their intention, because they're aware of the projects that deserve recognition. And they're not trying to create a category where only one piece exists, but they are trying to create a category where 4 or 5 things that happened over the last year that really are noteworthy don't get looked past and skipped over.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yep.
Do you actually get like a physical statue when you get a Brody? Do you have them in your office?
No, you get a virtual bumper sticker.
You get a bumper sticker. Interesting.
Yeah, it was right there on my slide.
Oh, so I've never gotten one or been nominated. I don't think so. I don't know.
They're
what
great, let me tell you.
Well, there you go. So you collected bumper stickers.
You do have to nominate things. They're not picking winners or anything. You do have to pick these. And some of these categories are things that every year there's, 10 or 20 different folks who could be up for that. And again, some of these categories, it literally is 3, 4, or 5 really special projects that deserve some recognition. I will just note, I think I'm safe saying this. I did ask the person who heads this up. I've been working with them over the last year. I was going to help them. I was supposed to help them design a new website, and I ran into a bunch of IT issues. If somebody out there is really good at website creation, and you can't false promise, because I've already done that, I can't drop the ball a second time. And I've got 2 IT guys with our company that could have done this, but they both had a lot of personal issues this year, so they weren't going to be able to help. If anybody's out there that can create a really dynamic website, is really good at that, reach out to me. And I'd love some help creating a really fancy site for the Brodies Awards every year. And I'll just note, I've asked, and as far as I know, this will happen, but Mormon Discussions YouTube channel, and I think it'll be under the Mormonism Live show. I've talked to RFM already about this, but I think we're going to be the ones who host the Brodies Awards this year. I'm really excited about that. And every year I pay attention to these, and there are so many content creators, both content creators who have been known for years, also content creators who have just come to the surface in the last 12 months. And this is such a cool moment in post-Mormon content creation to recognize those people who put a lot of hard work into the content they create. So I think the 2025 Brodies Awards will be hosted on Mormonism Live as one of our live shows. I asked ChatGPT to make a Brodies Award, and that's what it came up with. That's not their design. I don't think anybody gets like a real trophy, but you do get sort of a label that you can put onto your content. I'll just go back. There's not very many good pictures of Fawn Brody, and the one that's used often is very fuzzy. It's a really small picture, so when you enlarge it, it's pixelated. I asked AI to do a photo restoration, and if you go to the again, let's go to the photo here where RFM put the thing in. You can see they're very blurry,
yeah,
but there it is. And so there's
much better.
Brody photo restored, and this whole awards show is really an honor to her name and all the work that she did over the course of her life, and specifically her biography of Joseph Smith and her willingness to be critical and to be a historian in spite of the church wanting her to do anything but that. So I'll just note that. And I don't think I have anything else to add about that. So I'm
really looking forward to this. Is this going to be in February? Do we get to do some kind of fun opening number like Billy Crystal used to?
I know who Billy Crystal is. So I'm not naive to that, but I don't know what the number is that Billy Crystal does.
For the Oscars.
At the Oscars.
During this incredibly successful run, arguably the most popular MC for the Oscars ever. Yeah, but he'd always do some big production number at the beginning, and they were wonderful.
Yeah.
A parody song. Always a parody song. I
picture a show where you and I, we talk about the category, we talk about what projects have been done in that category, what the nominations were, and then, drum roll and announce who the winner is. And I think we may try to figure out a way to get those folks to even be ready in case any of them did want to sort of come on and accept their award and say something. But it'll depend on how many of these there are and how this all works out. But I definitely want to help this become bigger, more prominent, get a lot more visibility, and acknowledge and honor the content creators in our space. So
this is great. Okay. So actually we can bring everybody on, just who are nominated, and then we get to watch them sweat and that means that we have to keep the voting secret though.
Yeah. And I think we'll be able to do that. No problem. But we're still in the works talking about that, and we'll see how that plays out. But hopefully that all works as I'm telling you. And this should be really exciting. So I'll turn it back to you guys.
Okay. Well, since I'm in charge, let me turn it over to Rebecca.
There you go. We're just passing it along. Well, this was an interesting thing that happened over the weekend, and I'm calling this leading voice in polygamy revisionism, excommunicated. Now, I've used the word polygamy denier. I have used monogamy affirmer. I've reached out. I always get, in the comments that's rude, that's inappropriate. I do not know. I've heard that a polygamy revisionist is now perhaps the way to say it. Although when you talk about revisionist history, that is not necessarily a positive term. I've had someone say they should just be called future post-Mormons.
Or how just mental cases. Mental cases is good.
Well, anyway, a leading voice in perpetuating the narrative that Joseph Smith did not practice polygamy has been excommunicated. And we've been following this. I did a report a couple months ago about a guy that had a channel and was told to take it down. So we did. I don't think he was excommunicated because he did take his work down. Michelle Stone also threatened, and she also did take her work down. Well, Karen Hyatt, who is the producer of Michelle's 132 Problems and has her own content, said, hell no, I'm not taking it down. And so we find out what happens. Here are some of the things. She has a video called "Woe Unto You Scribes."
It's always the scribe's fault.
It's already,
never
yeah, they're
Joseph
basically
Smith's fault.
saying William
Those
Clayton.
scribes, you could say
yeah.
the same thing over and over 1,500 times
Yeah.
and they'd still write it down wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So, William Clayton, he did Joseph dirty, that kind of thing. Dan,
Vogel?
why can't Dan Vogel? Oh my gosh.
Dan Vogel?
I spaced on his last name.
Oh no,
Dan,
I hope you're not watching, Dan.
I know. I probably had a little aneurysm or something for all the stress
You
of
had a
the show.
danurism.
He has, taken her to task on that. Steve Pinecker just, I think, had her on today, or was going to talk about her excommunication. So she's out there. She is a leading voice in this. And I'm not going to show any clips, but this is her channel. And she put out a video called "Can a Mormon Defend Joseph Smith and Still, Stay in the Church?" Well, the answer apparently is no, not in this. So some of the things that she said here is, so anyway, long story. This is from the transcript. And this is a picture of Michelle Stone, not Karen Hyatt, because Michelle Stone, as I said, is somebody that said, okay. And she backed off. She took all of her content away and she remains in the church, not Karen. Karen says, so anyway, long story short, I'm not taking my stuff down. And he's like, the leader, well, if you're not going to take it down, then we have to have a membership council. So that's what happened Friday, is that I had a membership council. And the cool thing was I was allowed to have my bishop there. She talks about some positive experiences within the council. However, she was excommunicated. It was a council of love. This part I found interesting. She said, I've been told that this isn't about figuring out what's true or not true, because history is so hard to figure out. But it's about whether or not what I'm proclaiming aligns with current church teachings as found in the online gospel topic essays and other places. It astonishes me that anything, least of all ever-changing historical essays, are what we're kind of pinning our hats on. So that's interesting. It doesn't matter if what she's saying is true or not, or what anyone is saying is true. It has to align with what's in the essay. Well, if that's true, my elderly parents, when they were living, were they to have attended a regular sacrament meeting and bore their testimony, they should have been excommunicated, because they are espousing and talking about things that they knew to be true, as did everybody in the church in the 70s and 80s, that are no longer true, or in the gospel topic essays. So it is kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Not truth.
but this is a little closer to home, because what this lady, Michelle, is that her name? What's her name again? Karen?
She was the producer of 132 Problems. Yeah.
Yeah, she's like
Karen.
Cardin Ellis was to the TITS show.
Yes.
He was the producer. All I can say is that I don't know what your parents were saying, but what Karen is saying is that the president of the church is not sealed to his second wife.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But she's saying that, true or not, it doesn't matter. Everybody has to be on the same page with what's being said. And if it says something in the gospel topic essays, that's what everybody needs to say. In 2 years, when those essays change, you better sure be saying that, right? It doesn't really matter what true.
They're not going to change. Okay, yeah, but they're not going to change to say that Joseph
changed.
Smith didn't practice polygamy.
What? Think about just a decade ago. That was not on the church website that he practiced polygamy. It would have been the
Think
exact
about 5 decades ago, they didn't even have a church website.
That's true too. But that's what I mean by my parents, is just the idea that it's ever changing, it's ever fluctuating. And so in order to keep current, a lot of people aren't current. I bet half the members out there would say it's evil to wear a cross, right? That's not true anymore. So anyway, fluctuation. Any thoughts on that, Bill? Just the idea of it doesn't matter what's true, but it's what the church is saying at the moment.
By the way, both of you are right. The church has changed on lots of things, and you aren't allowed. I mean, you could be Dr. Lowry Nelson in 1948, and what you said was completely wrong, and you could say that today in a ward building, and everybody would go like, "Duh, that's what we all think." The church, just like the child abuse issue earlier, the church wants to always be playing both ways. And sometimes it's both ways at the same time. Sometimes it's one way at some previous moment and some another way in the future. Celestial marriage is required for exaltation. Celestial marriage has nothing to do with polygamy. It's just eternal marriage. And it plays word games. It changes all the time. No generation of Mormons have the same theology, beliefs, and expectations and standards, temple worthiness standards even, as the generation before or the generation after. There was a generation that paid tithing on surplus and interest, and now there's now the church pays on, the members pay on gross income. There is no way to know what Mormonism actually is because it's never been consistent. At the same time, I have a hard time believing that the church could ever walk back from this and pose an argument that Joseph Smith wasn't a polygamist. It would require something to be discovered that would force us all to rethink what the facts are, and it can't be the evidence that these people use.
I cannot imagine a sharper knife at the throat of modern Mormonism than this idea that Joseph Smith did not practice polygamy and Brigham Young came up with it and pawned it off on him. That would destroy the church, I would think. I don't see how the church recovers from that.
No, they couldn't. But imagine being in a temple recommend interview where they say, do you believe that Joseph did have this many wives? That's basically what they're saying. And it's hilarious to me that that's where they have to go. In the past, that was not where they went. That was not what they said. So it's interesting. But anyway, because of these views that even though Joseph himself says he was not a polygamist, right? And they all say that, and the church says that he is. She was excommunicated. She says, it astonishes me that anything, least of all, ever-changing historical essays written by very fallible scholars, and she does name some, would ever be praised more highly than the truth. But here we are.
You know what else she says in that? And I made it in a text to you as I listened to the first part of that, the video of her, is that the prophets get their information from the church historians.
Mm-hmm.
That itself is anathema to this entire church's foundation.
Yep.
I think it's true, but
I do too.
The prophets cannot be getting their information from church historians, because then you've put God out of it. God has no place in this church. He has no place in what they're teaching, which is the way it is. But you can't say that in the church, can you?
No, and the historians are lawyers, and the others are writer researchers, right? And that's where the information comes from. Here's my favorite thing, though, at the end.
Brian Hales is an anesthesiologist, though. Just look at him. He really enjoys his work. He likes putting people to sleep.
That's right. What is it? His specialty, the Book of Ether, all those jokes. There he is. Yeah, exactly. So here's my favorite thing, though, at the end. She says, and here's the thing. You want to know something funny? So I was kicked out of the church on Friday. And then on Saturday, what do you think? I cleaned the church building because I was scheduled to do it. And I helped somebody move. Still Mormon. Love you guys. See you next time.
Wow.
So there it is.
About a doormat.
Well, I feel like they do tell you can still pay tithing and you could still clean the church. I think that's all I have. Yep. I think we're on to Bill's story. Back to you.
Are we on to Bill's story?
I think we are.
Oh.
Yep. Finishing up. Yep.
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh. This is a very important story. It has to do with sports.
I'll be really quick here. Kalani Sitake, the head coach of the BYU Cougars football team, was reportedly very close to accepting a job at Penn State with the Nittany Lions. Remember old Jerry Sandusky? That didn't go well for Penn State, talking about abuse to children. Very close to accepting a job at Penn State, the Nittany Lions, until big money from boosters, including Jason McGowan, CEO of Crumble Cookies, came in to persuade him to stay. McGowan's public messages helped fan a wave of support, and there is some rumors of some behind-the-scene financial support to boosters to make this happen. I'll give those details here in just a second. McGowan's public messages helped create a wave of support. Some people are not replaceable, he said. Sounds like it's time for me to get off the sidelines and get to work. And you see that from looks like it's his Twitter account, the X account. So this was the page I saw this on was Bro Bible. Crumble Cookie CEO creates religious debate with financial pledge to BYU as a Mormon. So the CEO of Crumble catches wind that the BYU Cougars coach is seriously considering stepping up to a football program with more notoriety, Penn State. And when the CEO of Crumble caught wind of that, he put out that tweet and said, I'm going to get on this and figure out some way to make something happen here. Less than 48 hours later, Sataki signed a long-term extension with BYU that included a substantial raise, boosted name, image, likeness funding, and increased resources for his coaches and staff. But what this did was it caused some uproar within the believing community, who believers now pushing back against BYU and the church in how they fund the sports programs and how they suddenly step up to throw, I'll say, millions of dollars at someone to keep them. And all the athletes that have been in the news lately who have been paid millions and millions of dollars in order to choose BYU, they point out, let me grab the next thing here on my side. The question begins pouring into college football. Is college football consistent with the values laid out in the Book of Mormon about avoiding the spending of money for that which is of no worth? And that's the phraseology and the way that these scriptures seem to be interpreted. But what Mormons are pointing out, Latter-day Saints are pointing out about BYU's use of funds to fund their program and those folks who are stepping up to funnel millions of dollars through the university. They're using 2 Nephi 9:51, wherefore do not spend money for that which is of no value, of no worth, nor your labor for that which cannot satisfy. Don't waste money on things that don't offer lasting value is the point they're making. 3 Nephi 13:19, lay not up for yourselves treasures upon the earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt. And Alma 39:14, seek not after the vain things of the world, for you cannot carry them with you. Believers, Latter-day Saints are asking, wouldn't that money be put to better use than funding football players, football programs, football coaches, when this is just a non-gospel related thing that really in the whole scheme of things has no worth on the value of eternal souls and getting God's children back to the celestial kingdom. So it's a small story in my mind. I think fighting over sports is a vain act. I've been rooting for the Cleveland Browns since I was about 8 years old, and it's been nothing but misery and a factory of sadness for me. So I can totally understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. Talk about a vain act.
Yeah.
I would say, I think all the money because it's true, Crumble Guy did promise, I'll give you all more NIL money. You'll be able to get more athletes. I think all this money probably adds up to what they could match the giving machine contributions with, right? Last year it was 17 million. I bet it's something like that. But yeah, it's a big story with BYU. If you're on the Cougar board, like I am, looking at all that, and of course they're all gloating. They're sending Crumble cookie boxes to Penn State, saying, ha ha. A lot of faithful people are just swarming into Crumble to buy Crumble so that somehow their money will make it, to Coach Sataki. It's a huge deal. Some people think, he was never going to go to Penn State. It was just a big takeaway, right? Drama at the end, very exciting. And now everybody loves him more. And they have the amazing story of him choosing, the mission of BYU and choosing
money.
the church. Huh?
The story is he chose money.
No. Read the story in the Deseret News. The story is he chose with his faith and his family and his school.
Then he wasn't going to go to Penn State?
Was he what?
Then he wasn't going to go to Penn State at all?
He was until the money went up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Some people think it was kind of
It has nothing to do with faith or anything. It's just money.
I'm telling you, that is how it's been portrayed, though. It's a great feel-good story. It's a feel-good story now. And
the coach is up for sale.
You can buy anything in this world with money, right?
Yes, including this coach.
Yep, that's it. But no, it was a lot of fun for everybody to eat Crumble cookies and think somehow that eating cookies was keeping the coach. So big deal. And I think we'll be reporting in the new year on more big name, big money athletes, which we love to report on. So.
Okay, really good.
Yeah.
So continuing on then, this slide is something. I'm sorry, what, Rebecca?
I have one tiny story. I know we're at the very end, but this is my one from last week that I was able to import over. Mm-hmm. Utah is the second most festive state. There, I said it. Do you feel that way, Bill? Do you feel festive? He's like, yeah. It's based on search terms. And what I really think is, if you look at this map here, I think searching, Google, like this, you can freeze this. It's pretty funny and kind of look at the different search terms that different states search. But I think Utah searched Christmas lights a lot more than anybody else. And I think they were talking about Temple Square. So I think that probably pushed them over the edge. I think it was skewed a little bit, but apparently it is the second most. What was the first? Let me see. Who beat us out? West Virginia is more festive than we are. South Dakota's there, Idaho, Kentucky.
So they're just basically working up from the bottom of the educational rankings.
What are you trying to say? The worst states, the least festive. You don't want to go there for Christmas. District of Columbia. I can see that. Not a lot of cheer there right now. New York. I don't know. I was at
I'm going to get so much hate mail over that one.
Exactly. Hawaii. That surprises me. Nevada. I was just in Nevada. I don't know. And Maryland. So anyway, now we know. And if you want to freeze the screen on this, you can see what everybody Googles. But Christmas lights was a big one and Christmas movies here in Utah. Those two search terms pushed it over the edge.
Well, good heavens, Rebecca. I mean, tell us about the Christmas movies and plays you've seen already this year.
Well, we've seen the same play. For the first time, I saw Holiday Inn. I've never seen that at the theater. Of course, I've seen the movie where the song White Christmas was debuted. They had no idea it would be such a huge hit. It just went nuts. Then they created the movie, my very favorite movie of all time, White Christmas, Danny Kaye, Bing Crosby, Rosemary Clooney, and who's that other one, right? We never remember her name. But anyway, I saw the play, and then RFM took the lovely Wendy to see it over
Vera
the weekend.
Ellen?
Vera Allen, yes. Thank sorry. You. She has the smallest waist known to humankind, but yeah, it's amazing. That's right. Anyway, the pictures you posted online, I'm sure a lot of people in the chat saw them. You looked incredibly dapper. Wendy looked amazingly beautiful, and you were out on the town.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
All was amazing. I had a great time. And I know that you're going to go see White Christmas here probably 2 times in the next.
I am. I have to see it wherever it is, be it the movie or be it the play. It's just my all-time favorite.
Well, just remember they're doing choreography.
Doing choreography. Yeah. They took that out of it. No, I can sing every song. I can say every line. No one wants to go to this with me because I'm very annoying during it. I sing out loud. I laugh. I cry. Yeah.
The best things happen when you're dancing.
The best things. Yeah. I bet no one in the chat has ever heard of it.
Oh, no. Before we get to that, we got an announcement. New numbers.
We'll take this. Yeah.
I'll just note, we are now up to 74 or more. It might be higher than that. I actually think we're at least 75 at this point. But 74 plus cabins are booked for the cruise. Again, we leave September 13th. We embark out of Los Angeles. You can get your own quote with that link there. It's also in the YouTube synopsis down below. You can get more info through that site, which is also in the synopsis below. And the big thing to announce right now is we've added our most recent influencer, author of the book, This Is My Doctrine, Charlie Harrell, joined the cruise today. And so we've added him to the graphic. We're about to run out of room. I have to keep making all these circles smaller and smaller. So I'm super excited. We've got a whole bunch of folks here that have made a difference in my life for sure. And I think the lives of a lot of you in helping you process the stuff that went on when you discovered that Mormonism was not what it claimed to be. And so if you want to join us for that cruise in September of 2026, it's going to be, I think, just so much fun. There'll be activities. You'll get a chance to do excursions with the various folks in that on that brochure there, that promo. And we're really looking forward to this. It's going to be just a really good time.
This is starting to look like a movie-length version of The Love Boat with all of these guest stars.
I feel like that. Whenever I see this graphic, I hear the theme, kind of going in my head. You're on the gangplank, you're walking in, and all the intrigue. No, I'm just so excited. And we have a Facebook page, as Bill has mentioned before, where once you book, you can jump on that page. We've got like 80 people on the page. We are chatting, getting to know each other, welcoming each other. I feel like we're all going to be best friends before we even get on the cruise in September. So it's been really fun just to interact in that way months before we even go.
Especially if Jacob Hansen shows up.
He said, I saw in a comment that he's tempted to go. I wish he would. That would be fun.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to name the folks: Radio Free Mormon, Rebecca Biblioteca, myself, Landon Brophy, Charlie Harrell, Ganesh Cherian, Dr. Julie Hanks, Jana Spangler, Randy Bell, Kobe Reddish, and Sam Young. And I'm pretty confident saying there's going to be more on the list before we get there. So folks, if you want to be part of this, I wouldn't wait too much longer. At some point, Carnival's going to tell us enough's enough. You guys don't get to sign up anymore, folks. That's it. And you want to get in before then, because otherwise you'll be out of luck.
Oh, good point. So this is for Mormonish tomorrow night, right, Rebecca? Tell us about it.
It's true. Tomorrow night, Tuesday, 6 p.m. always is when regular Mormonish airs. And I always get content from Faithful Social Media. And I saw somebody make a post that said, I'm kind of new. How was the Book of Mormon translated? I'm hearing different things. Ha ha. So all these people weigh in, and the answers were right and left, right and left. So I kind of grabbed screenshots, got Ganesh, and you will not believe everybody is just married to a certain way of translation. The church may have their essay, but that's not what the regular people believe. Plates, rock and hat, power of God. It's going to be really fascinating to go through all these different answers. The bottom line is, if you don't want to watch and skip to the end, nobody knows the hell how it was translated.
I think that's probably the bottom line.
It is. Look, I just told everyone not to watch my episode. No, it's very entertaining as we get to that realization at the end.
Yes, but of course, the naturalistic explanations for the Book of Mormon cannot be correct because the critics do not agree among themselves as to one theory.
That was not brought up. Exactly.
Hey, guess what's going to happen on Wednesday? Guess what's happening tomorrow, actually, Rebecca? Not only are you having your Mormonish episode, but Mormonism Live is celebrating its 5th anniversary tomorrow, December 9th, 2025. It was 5 years ago on a night just like tomorrow that we did the first Mormonism Live episode. We're going to have a celebration, and we're going to do a lot of work behind the scenes, me and Bill, in order to get this thing ready. But what we'd like to do is ask you, this is 5 years, pretty much uninterrupted. That's 5 times, that's 250 plus episodes that we've done. We'd like to know what you think was a good episode, what was meaningful to you, what you liked, maybe what you didn't like. But hopefully what you like, because it's supposed to be a celebration. So let's try and keep it on the positive side. But if you didn't like something, you can bring that up too. Among all the 250 episodes, and if you want, I didn't ask Bill about this. I hope this is okay, Bill. If you want to identify a clip from an episode, as long as it's no more than 3 minutes at the most, hopefully no more than a minute. If there's a clip that you want to identify, you could call in, because you'll have to zoom in on a link. Let us know, and then I can look it up, or Bill can look it up, by which I mean Bill can look it up, and then go to that place, and we could put it up on the screen, and we could all enjoy it together. This could be a whole lot of fun. I'm really excited. I can't believe it's been 5 years, Bill. Can you?
Time does fly when you're having fun, and I got to say, I have a ton of fun with Mormonism Live, and I have a ton of fun working with you. So this will be a great evening, a celebration, and it'll be a chance for you guys to celebrate with us. Also, if you want to leave us a comment before the show to let us know maybe something that was meaningful so that we could have some things ready to go, if you go to the Mormon Discussion YouTube channel, go to the live tab, just click the button that says live, and you'll see that this show is scheduled. If you go into that show, you can just go into the live chat before the show even starts. And so we could have anytime from now till then, you could put your comment in and just say, hey, I really liked this episode. I really liked, this is the timestamp of where something was said. And we could have a bunch of this already ready. Otherwise, as you say, RFM, if somebody notifies us during the show, it'll only take us a minute or so to grab that, and we can chat until we find it. So that'll be easy enough to do.
It'll be awesome. If you can believe it, the very first episode 5 years ago was about the TITS show that Fair Mormon was hosting with Kwaku L, Brad Whitbeck, and of course, directed and produced by Cardin Ellis.
That project didn't last long, didn't it? Our analysis of it, Mormonism Live, has lasted 5 years. TITS, this is the show, lasted about a month, and then it got pulled.
We blew that sucker up with our first episode.
Yeah.
We totally blew it up. It was pulled within months, I think, at the following March. So anyway, it's going to be a lot of fun. And then, of course, Friday, we've got Mormonism After Dark. It's the place all the cool cats want to be on Friday night at 8:00 p.m. Mountain Time. And I think that's about it. So everybody, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I had a great time. Bill, thank you. Rebecca, thank you. And thank you, everybody at home. Please hit like. please hit subscribe. If you haven't done it already, please go ahead and hit like. And please hit subscribe so you can be subscribed to the newscast and you'll get notifications when it's coming out. And like last Friday, we had an unscheduled pop-up newscast, which I think has over 20,000 views between the two of us between Mormon Discussions and Mormonish.
Over 30,000.
Oh, wow. So, yeah. And a lot of people, you could miss that. But if you get the notifications and you're available, then you can watch it live and be part of the live chat and everything. So go ahead and hit subscribe, hit like, and thank you so much for watching. We'll see you tomorrow, Mormonish, and I've already done the schedule, so I'm not going to do it again. But have a great evening, everybody, and thank you for watching from the Mormon Newscast. Good night.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.